Right, with that, I recognize the gentlelady from Nevada, Ms. Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're on this agreement, I would ask you, Dr. Schroden, what do you think of the agreement? Do you think that negotiating directly with the Taliban without the Afghan government present was a good idea? Talk about lack of intelligence. We didn't have their input when they negotiated this deal. Do you think also that future Homeland Security implications can come from our commitment to the deal?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. I would say that, again, the only way that the Taliban was going to negotiate with the United States was to not have the Afghan government in the room. So to the extent that we wanted to have a negotiation with them, that was a condition that had to be met in order for those talks, in order to begin. They had steadfastly refused to engage with us or to engage with the Afghan government being in the room. So that was a condition that had to be met to even get the talks going. That said, one of the goals of the talks at the outset was to include a structured framework for the Afghan government and the Taliban to talk and to reach agreement on sort of a future, governance structure for the country. And that term, which was a goal at the outset of the initiation of these discussions, was not included in the agreement that was signed in February of 2020.
So what about future Homeland Security issues, which is what this committee is supposed to be focused on? How much of a threat does that situation now pose for us?
Well, I think there's two primary groups in Afghanistan that have an expressed intent to attack the United States homeland. That would be Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State Khorasan Province, or ISKP. Al-Qaeda has minimal, if any, capability to do that from Afghanistan right now, and that's not just my assessment. The UN has also assessed that as recently as late 2022. So Al-Qaeda is largely a localized, actor at this point in time in Afghanistan. ISKP has a lot more capability to attack beyond Afghanistan, and indeed they've conducted some tens of attacks in Pakistan as well as cross-border attacks against both Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. So they are a regional menace at this point. They don't currently have the ability to attack the United States homeland, nor to my knowledge have we detected any intent or any sort of planning or activities on their part to do that. I know several people have quoted General Kurilla, the commander of Central Command, having said that in his estimation within 6 months, ISKP could attack externally. When he was pressed on that particular point, though, in his testimony, he acknowledged that those attacks would much more likely to be regional or potentially into Europe, and that an attack against the U.S. homeland would be much, much more unlikely.
Thank you. Well, along those same lines, Mr. Sales, you quote a Washington Examiner article that warns about 98 individuals who are on the terrorist watch list were apprehended after crossing the southern border. So do you think this is a threat to the homeland, or would you acknowledge what percentage of the people that we've encountered along the border are represented by this 98?
Well, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. Just to be clear, the source that I cited for those numbers was not a newspaper, but rather U.S. Customs and Border Protection. I do think that the dramatic spike we've seen from 0 KSTs encountered several years ago to 98 last year and 69 so far this year is troubling. I think terrorists are aware of gaps in our border security, and they will certainly try to exploit those gaps.
I would give you the number since you didn't answer my question. It's 0.0044%, 0.0044%. And these individuals were apprehended, isn't that correct?
That is correct, Congresswoman, but I think, remember, it was just 19 hijackers who were able to pull off the 9/11 attacks.
But those weren't apprehended, and that's not relevant to what we're talking about now. We're talking about today across the southern border, the percentage, and those were the ones who were apprehended. So let's don't spread misinformation claiming that this big wave is waltzing across our border to attack like 9/11. Is that what you're trying to say? We're going to have another 9/11? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Congresswoman, I think the American people would generally agree with me that if almost 100 known...
Well, we can say one person can blow up a building, so, I think that's stretching the point of what we're doing here. I think we can say that our border agents are working pretty effectively if they have captured 98, this 98 that you're talking about is such a small percent, that we are doing a pretty good job of stopping these outside people coming in to threaten our national security. Would you not concede that?
Well, to continue my thought, Congresswoman, I believe, and I believe that the American people would agree, that if nearly 100 known or suspected terrorists are able to come into the United
But
States—
they weren't. They were apprehended.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish that sentence?
Go ahead.
If 98 known or suspected terrorists are able to enter the United States, that would be of concern, and it would raise this further question: how many others are getting in that we were not able to catch and that we don't know about?
Gentlelady's time has expired.